Look around. You can find cars like these on AutoTrader, like that car riding your tail. Or if you're tailgating right now, all those cars doubling as kitchens and living rooms are on AutoTrader too. Are you working out and listening to this ad at the same time? Well, multitasking pro, cars like the ones in the gym parking lot are for sale on AutoTrader. New cars, used cars, electric cars, maybe even flying cars. Okay, no flying cars, but as soon as they get invented, they'll be on AutoTrader. Just you wait. AutoTrader.
Every Pokemon Episode Ever podcast is now on YouTube. Go on YouTube and search Every Pokemon Episode Ever podcast and click that subscribe button to never miss an episode. Welcome back, everybody, to another fantastic episode of the Every Pokemon Episode Ever podcast. I am one of your hosts this week, Wrestling Chris G, and on the other line with me, he's the man with all the emotions. It's good old Dougie Fresh. Dougie, my man, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. Can't complain. Don't really understand it, but I don't have a bit for it, so I'm just rolling through it.
Well, the reason I said the man with all the emotions, this week's episode is called The March of the Exeggutor Squad, episode 43. And with Exeggutor, each of its heads has a different emotion and has its own personality. So you're the man with all the emotions today. Get it?
Yeah, but I don't have more than one head.
Yeah, you do.
Oh, shut up.
Oh man, I'm not usually that quick.
Grow the fuck up.
For people back at home, that was a dick joke. And I can say that because we're an adult podcast, people. Shit. Just throwing that out there. It says explicit before you click on the download. But this is normally our ramble before we get into things, Doug. We've had a pretty successful couple weeks these past few weeks, and I don't want to give us a big head, but we're starting to get recognized, and it's kind of easier to get into a few DMs that we've gotten into recently. How are you feeling over there? Because I kind of give you the day by day of our adventures going forward. Because you don't want the login because you say you'll be looking at that stuff like every second.
Yeah, and I don't. Ain't nobody got time for that. No, it's been interesting. You know, I mean, you've been working the tweets and sending out some messages, and we've gotten a handful of guests that you've already heard, and it was like all of a sudden one day we had a bit of a uptick in downloads, and
it's been
pretty steady since then.
Yeah. And I feel like it's okay to say it now, whether it actually happens or not. We're still trying to ramble it out, but it seems like we're going to have a pretty big Pokemon guest that we kind of hinted to on the last few episodes. And I can kind of put it out there as of now, because hopefully by the time this episode drops, we'll have a little bit more concrete stuff. But it seems like the voice of Ash Ketchum may be coming onto our podcast for a future episode. And me and you have talked personally as to which one, but I don't want to throw that out there as of yet. But it seems like things are looking promising as long as we can get our schedules to kind of match up.
Yeah, we've got an idea of which episode we want to do, and if everything uh, lines up the way we want it to, it should be pretty nice.
Yeah,
But
and I didn't want to announce that like right away. I mean, obviously we told you to go on Twitter. If you went on Twitter, it was clear as day as to what was going on, because there's been some messages back and forth that is on there. So I felt like it's been a couple weeks. If you wanted to view the tweets, you already have. And if you didn't, what the hell is wrong with you? But we're going to announce it on here. But everything seems kind of promising. We got that. We got a couple YouTubers in our DMs. We have, in a couple weeks from now, we're going to have another person on our podcast that we will mention next week. But yeah, we seem to be doing pretty well for ourselves, Doug.
yeah, and I mean it's about persistence, and I'm probably not breaking any news to anybody that has a podcast that they've been working at, but you know, don't get discouraged if you don't, hit something, right away. Keep
Oh hell
working at it.
no! Do you remember us back in the day when it came down to the wrestling podcast when we first started it? I mean, we got shit for downloads at like right away, and we had to work at it, and we had to find different things that caught attention to all of our audience. I mean, we even did fucking storytelling at one point, Doug.
Yeah, and that shit probably would have worked if it wasn't so damn, pardon me, time consuming.
Hell yeah, it was time consuming. We never did finish that last episode, did we?
No, I think we kind of left it kind of hanging.
Yeah, we did. But yeah, I mean, just like you said, Doug, I mean, don't get discouraged, and I mean, things will end up working out for you as long as you're focusing on your specific audience. Like me and you and our other co-host C Note, once we can get everything back in line for the wrestling podcast, I mean, we kind of stay in our own lanes. We have the Pokemon podcast here, and then we got the full wrestling podcast on the other end, and we really don't intertwine either show.
No, and I mean, that's the one thing, that. But the thing is, I think if people know you or I from well, obviously, if they know us from the wrestling, they probably have listened to our show. So, I mean, and you kind of touched on it. The unfortunate thing is, until, because because we've mentioned that we do the wrestling show a couple times.
Yes.
But unfortunately, that's kind of taken a bit of a back seat. Just life is, happening and stuff.
Yeah, and I'll be honest. With my epilepsy, my health hasn't been the greatest. Everybody, I've been kind of open with my friends. I'll kind of throw it out there, but it seems like we're on the right path to getting everything figured out, without going into too much detail. And we'll be able to get everything back in line to where we can do the wrestling podcast. And I mean, yeah, you're getting Pokemon every single week, but what you guys have to remember is we record months in advance. So we kind of just set it up on our host site and they just drop weekly.
Yeah, and we've made no secret that we've batch recorded quite a few episodes. I think we had 12 out before we went live or whatever the fuck.
Yep.
So yeah, eventually we're going to get the wrestling show back on its feet, and we're gonna start, at the end of these episodes, we're gonna remind people. And I mean, yeah, that's gonna be tough, but like, because I mean, we could remind people at the end of a Pokemon episode to listen to us on a Friday when our wrestling show drops. But if we're talking about, and if we're doing that on an episode that's gonna come out 3 weeks after the fact,
we might not be recording that week.
Right. So it's that's kind of tough. And I mean, obviously, we're not going to, if you're listening to the wrestling show, that means that you like us, which means you're probably listening to this as well.
Yes. And wrestling's starting to get somewhat better out of the pandemic. So hopefully we'll be able to entertain you a little bit more than what we were able to entertain you during the pandemic.
Yeah, because Lord knows that there's enough wrestling podcasts that are going out there every week and going, this show sucks, I don't understand it, and they're cutting people, and, it's, I mean, there's enough negative podcasts, and, people are going to say, well, it's not negative, it's telling it how it is. But you don't need, 15 different wrestling podcasts telling you the same shit.
Oh, hell no. I get fucking sick of you.
Well, right. And, we had a discussion earlier today. The show on Mondays is just kind of a 3-hour show, and there's nothing really that I'm watching going, damn, I wish I could hop on the show this week and talk about it or whatever.
For real. But outside of the wrestling podcast, everybody, you guys clicked on this episode because you want to listen to Pokemon. And we've gotten kind of our spiel out of the way. We do have some announcements that will come at a later time. We were going to talk about it this week, but I kind of feel like we've kind of batched everything up. So we'll announce those on a different show, probably next week. But this episode is our 43rd episode.
It might not be next week either.
The problem with Paris?
Oh, fuck, I forgot. Yeah, never mind.
Yeah, because we're recording with our special guest a little out of order tomorrow.
Yeah, that's not going to make sense to y'all. Never mind. Don't worry about it.
So, today's episode is episode 43, The March of the Exeggutor Squad, or translated from Japan. I was about to say from Japanese.
That would have been right.
Yeah, that would have been right, too. The huge march of the Nassy squad. That's Nassy, not nasty, Nasty.
Yeah, and I still don't like it any more than I liked it last week.
I know. This episode aired May 7th, 1998. And here in the States, it landed on October 30th, 1998. And this is the last episode that aired in 1998, because starting next week, we jump all the way up to February of 1999. So the first real era of Pokemon is coming to an end as of this episode, Doug.
Yeah, I noticed that when I was trying to look ahead for some upcoming history dates. Because you get into an October groove, and you're like, Well, damn. What happened? I don't get to talk about Christmas.
For real, and I'm kind of looking forward to one of the Christmas episodes that we're gonna be covering, but I'm gonna have to look forward into the schedule. I'm not sure, because I think one of the Christmas episodes happens. Oh, well, as of this episode, it has to have happened back in the past. The Jinx episode that never really aired because of the whole blackface thing. On that episode, Ash still has Charmander.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be weird.
Yeah, it's gonna be weird freaking watching that episode. And there's like 2 episodes that ended up airing here in the States, but when it aired here, it aired on VHS. So it didn't really air on public TV because of the whole controversy with Jinx. So it's going to be weird taking a step back, and you'll know after listening to this episode as to why. Because when I was rewatching this episode, Doug, I completely forgot what the ending of this episode really entailed.
Of this episode?
Yes, of the Exeggutor squad.
Yeah.
The evolution change that we get.
Yeah, I had this mixed up with the Charizard evolution for some reason. Because I have a vivid, well, not a vivid, but I remember the episode where he evolves into Charizard.
Yes.
And I could not remember, and obviously we'll get to that, but I could not, because I remembered that, and I'm like, how does he evolve into Charmeleon? And then I'm like, oh, right. And,
so
it makes sense because, and, we'll get into it when we get into it, but,
yeah.
But yeah.
So this day in history, Doug, this week, mine lands on 2012. What year does yours land on?
1974.
All right. So as usual, you are the first to go with your history date. So what do you have for us this week, Doug?
So on October 30th, 1974, we have the famous Rumble in the Jungle boxing match between Muhammad Ali and George Foreman in Kinshasa, Zaire.
Yeah, you pronounced that right.
Yep. Pardon me. Muhammad Ali wins with an 8th round KO. And this is where he employed his famous rope-a-dope technique against George Foreman, where he would just kind of bob and weave and, kind of let Foreman tire himself out.
Kind of what Ben Askren failed to do this past Saturday when he got knocked the fuck out by Jake Paul.
Yeah. Well,
please tell me you saw that knockout.
I saw the knockout. I didn't fucking pay for the fight because I'm not an idiot.
Well, yeah, I didn't pay for it either, but I watched it.
No, but like 1.5 million people did, or something stupid.
Yeah, he's out of the top 10 top paid pay-per-views for boxing. He's number 10. That was freaking sick.
Makes me interested to see what kind of numbers him and Mayweather are going to pull in.
Yeah, if that fight ever gets off the ground.
Well, right. I mean, that's the other issue, because wasn't that
was supposed to happen 2 months ago, back in February.
Right.
So I mean, obviously, everyone, you're listening to this in the future, but we're recording this episode. Oh, I'm sorry, Doug.
Yeah, this is supposed to happen 2 months ago for us, and you're listening to this, what, a month from now from that?
Yeah. So we're recording this on April 20th of 2021. So sorry if this fight's already happened. Well, no, it takes long.
It won't have happened.
Yeah, it wouldn't have happened yet. So, but yeah, that's a good thing for your date, bro.
I'm gonna start writing them down. I'm gonna start, making a brief note of them because I had a fucking hell of a time trying to find it because I found it and then
and then you lost it.
And it wasn't there.
So mine's not as extravagant, but it was a big day in the history of Lucasfilms. On this day in 2012, Walt Disney purchased Lucasfilms and its rights for Star Wars and Indiana Jones for $4.05 billion with a B dollars.
So that was 2012.
Yes.
So since 2012, how many Star Wars movies have come out?
4.
And have any of them been any good?
I liked them. I can't speak for everybody. I would say within the 4 that came out, there's been 2 very popular ones, which would be the last one and kind of a prequel episode.
I thought wasn't the prevailing, and I don't do Star Wars, so I'm partially doing this to ask questions. I'm partially doing it to stir the pot. Wasn't the prevailing narrative around the last one that because that was the Rise of Skywalker, right?
Give me 1 second.
No. Because one of them, I thought definitively, people were saying, well, this is the end of the Star Wars.
Yeah.
It was bad.
Well, they said that, and then we got The Mandalorian. So, yes, The Rise of Skywalker was the last one. Then right before that was The Last Jedi and The Force Awakens.
So there's only been 3.
No, there was a, those are just the saga movies. There was a freaking, a Solo. Yeah. The Han Solo prequel movie. So that one ended up doing gangbusters, but I would say it's between that and The Rise of Skywalker are the ones that got the most views. I can't really speak on the other 2.
And when did Skywalker come out?
2019. So
if it wasn't for the pandemic, do you think we would have gotten another one? Is there another one in discussion? Because they were steady coming out every Christmas there, weren't they?
Yeah, for a while, but as of right now, I haven't heard anything in regards to another Star Wars movie. I know Mandalorian is kind of recasting due to the whole Speak Out movement that came out.
Well, yeah, you had that one chick fucking shot her mouth off.
Yep.
And I don't have the info in front of me, so I'm not really going to say much more than that, because I don't... She said some shit she shouldn't have said, and I don't remember the context. But
yeah, we won't get into that on this podcast, because that's a whole nother show, but...
Well, I would if I had the quotes in front of me, but I don't care enough to look them up. I just know she was in the news.
Yeah, but yeah, she's being recasted. Some other people are being recasted. We do have a mixture of Star Wars and then the mixture of the whole Marvel world that's been coming out on Disney Plus. So I'm not quite sure what the future holds for Star Wars, but I'm sure we'll get another trilogy within the next 10 years.
And then you said that also included Indiana Jones, the rights to Indiana Jones.
Yes.
And have they done a movie since?
When was the last Indiana Jones?
The last Indy movie I thought was Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and that was way back.
They actually have another Indiana Jones. It's called Indiana Jones 5, and it will be coming out next year. The last one came out in 2008.
See, damn, so we were graduating high school.
Yes.
Fuck.
I know, right? We're fucking old. But yeah, the next one's coming out next year. It looks like it's
Is that confirmed, or was that supposed to be, and then they had to push it?
I mean, per Google, Google has it down as a legit movie with a screen cap. So it looks like it is coming out. I'll go ahead and click on this real quick. Yeah, they have a cast list and everything, including Harrison Ford in this movie. So yeah, it's a thing.
All right.
So they're shooting for 2020. I mean 2022.
I was going to say they missed.
You had one job. But yeah. So like I said, back in 2012, Walt Disney purchased the rights for Star Wars and Indiana Jones for $4.05 billion, making people stupid fucking rich, and they don't have to ever work anymore. Not that they didn't have to work previously, but they really don't have to work now. They got fuck you money and they got South Park money.
And then some, probably.
Yeah. So, all right. So that was our history moment, Doug. Are you ready to get on into this week's episode?
I believe so, yes.
All right. So I'm pulling open the episode right now, and we start this week's episode off kind of unusual. They walk into a town. We don't really get this town's name, and the narrator doesn't really say what the town's name is either. But there's a festival going on, Doug.
Right, and I think that's kind of what I'm not going to talk about the narrator like he's a person, but I think the carnival kind of took precedent
Yes.
on identifying the town.
So we start this off. There's a bunch of beautiful women in nice circus gear. It looks like a parade is going by, and our trio and Pikachu are standing within this crowd watching the parade. And Brock is just smitten, just looking at these girls, and he's like, man, these are some pretty, pretty women.
About to hyperventilate over there.
I know. So, and Misty's looking on, and Ash and Brock, just right out of the get-go, like within the first 10 seconds of the episode, throw their clothes off, saying that they're ready to party. And they're in a full-blown party outfits, which looks like came from the 1960s.
I was gonna say 60s or 70s. I call bullshit on this because I think it's kind of been established that Ash barely has a change of underwear. So you're not gonna sit there and tell me that this motherfucker is sitting on a full-fledged prom outfit.
Well, I mean, they've been on the road for quite some time. He's won a few badges. I'm sure he's won some money. And I'm sure he went out and bought a really, really nice outfit, even though Misty is stuck in the same damn outfit that she normally is in.
Brock's wearing a goddamn vest without a damn shirt.
Yeah, and I'm going to throw out there. I feel like the writers of this episode, the people that were basically drawing this cartoon, they gave Misty a little booty in this episode. I don't know if you noticed that, and it's kind of weird for me to say that on this podcast, but they really exaggerated on her butt in this episode.
I did not track that even a little bit. I mean, yeah, maybe just taking a quick glance at it as she's kind of walking away from them as they're getting their boogie on.
Yeah,
and she is going to play the assistant here in a couple minutes.
Yeah, and but yeah, Ash and Brock are standing there, and they're like, "We're ready to party." And as they threw their clothes off, they asked Misty if she wants to join in on the action. and Pikachu kind of jumps onto Misty's shoulder, and Misty graciously declined the offer and kind of walked away from this moment, Doug.
Yeah, and I can't say that I blame her. You know, usually I would probably call Misty a party pooper. But yeah, that's weird.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you know, out of nowhere, like there's no rhyme nor reason. And, you know, like I say, they're just dressed for prom.
Yeah, and outside of the ending to this episode, and we stated this last week, Pokemon's on kind of a filler episode. And with this being the final episode of the year for this brand, I guess this was a way to say we're not going to continue any main storylines because you're not going to get Pokemon for another, November, December, January. So for another 4 months.
Yeah, but you could have left him on a cliffhanger.
Yeah, you could have. Well, I mean, I guess kind of they really didn't they? A little bit. So we go straight from that scene to Misty and Pikachu just having a grand old time. They're on one of those swings that has the little tiny rope or chain on it that's swinging you around, where if it gets too fucking hot, that thing can break, to going on a merry-go-round that's full of Ponyta and Rapidash, and Pikachu's having a grand old time. And then they go and they get ice cream, and Misty's like, what ride do you want to go on next? And then we hear some begging in the background. And Doug, do you want to go over this part of the scene?
Yeah, so we pan over and we see, I guess who we can infer is a magician.
Yes, we don't ever really get his name, do we?
I could have sworn it was like Melvin or Marvin, but that could have just been me filling in a blank. But yeah, so he's groveling at the feet of his assistant, it turns out. And, you know, she's saying that she's had it and she's quitting. And, you know, as we get a little bit more information, we find out that she hasn't been fairly compensated. And that's been due to lack of customers. And
yeah, she kind of feels like this guy's a nobody. And she was his assistant. She was being nice for him, and it seems like he's been stringing her along, which I'm gonna probably guess for a couple months, because the way that this scene kind of played out was the fact that she's sitting there going, I've given you chance after chance, and you keep failing. And we'll call him Marvin. And Marvin goes over and he's grabbing her leg and basically trying to like hug her. And then we get a close-up shot of his Exeggutor, and his Exeggutor kind of looks away because his assistant literally beats him to shit and leaves him laying on the ground, Doug.
He got popped, and we see, you know, he gets knocked back into the stand, and he's got a black eye, and he's swirling, and
then we get Misty in the shot.
Yeah, and, you know, the assistant walks off saying, I've heard your promises before, and, you know, she's had her wits' end. And then, you know, Misty walks up just being a concerned onlooker, asking if he's okay, and, you know, he kind of puts on the sob story.
Yeah,
and he says,
he's like,
you're a kind person, you'd help me out, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And she said, sure. And Misty is naive. Well, not naive. She just, you know.
She's always willing to help.
Right.
And he's like, he kind of gives her, just like you said, the sob story, kind of makes her feel bad. We've established that Misty is a 10-year-old, and Misty can't say no unless it's for Ash Ketchum. So when she sees somebody in trouble, she's always willing to help. And he sits here and says, "You're the only one that can help me. Can you please help me? I need an assistant for my show."
Melvin.
So yeah, he's basically begging, and Misty, she really doesn't want to help this guy, but she kind of gets pressured into it. I mean, she has the execute jumping up and down. Melvin says that he's a magician. He kind of wows her by giving her a flower that we find out is a dead flower.
Well, it's a magic flower. Don't kill the illusion. And, get little Pokemon scarves coming off of it.
Yeah.
He says, "My dream is to have a Las Vegas showroom and perform my act in front of a cheering crowd."
And he wants to have his own Las Vegas showroom. Which I thought was weird. So, I mean, have we not gotten to the point where we don't differentiate the real world from Pokemon? Because I feel like we've gotten past the whole like regular animals in Pokemon and then Pokemon. I feel like we're at the point now where Pokemon in the world are what the animals are, but he's legit saying Las Vegas in this episode, which is something that we know here in the States, but should not really be a thing in Pokemon.
Well, no, and I mean, we kind of poked fun at this a couple of weeks back. I think they were walking into a town, and they were going to go to the Pokemon Center and get something to eat, and Brock said something about wanting a deep dish double cheese pizza.
Yes.
And I kind of did a double take on that, because it's like, there's no way. Like, I have a hard time believing that, deep dish pizza is a thing that's made it to Pokemon canon.
For real. We've gotten into the whole donuts and rice balls.
Rice balls, right.
So
yeah, I don't, and yeah, them name checking Las Vegas, like, I understand, it's localization and, what have you, and, they got to work with the translation the best they can.
I think they could have done better there. I mean, they could have just called the town Grand Royale. He wants his own showroom in the Grand Royale, and we would know that he's talking about Las Vegas, but he doesn't have to say Las Vegas. So
right, like, I got like a big whiff of like the southern U.S. going way back with the Ponyta episode.
Yes.
And I was laughing pretty much the whole episode at the accents. But like nobody name checked Texas.
No.
So,
even though you were doing the spit gig every single time that you were doing a voice for one of the episodes.
Every time I could, boy, I tell you.
So we go straight from him talking Misty into being one of his little showgirls to where...
Ew.
What?
Don't say it like that.
Well, she is a showgirl.
No, but that's creepy the way you said it.
Oh, okay. Well, his assistant. To where he dressed her in a Goldeen outfit, which I thought was pretty funny. And Pikachu's in on the act too. And Misty's looking into the crowd. There's maybe 5 or 6 people in this crowd, and one person's sleeping, and he's basically talking to the crowd as if he has a full crowd. And Misty's very, very embarrassed and says, well, at least no one I know would be here because there's only just a few people here. And then here comes Ash and Brock.
Here comes Ash and Brock. Now, I have many issues. Not so much about the scene, but, well, I guess because, like, Pikachu's on stage, right? He's a little jacket and bow tie.
Yes.
He's Ash's Pokemon.
Correct.
He's Ash's number one Pokemon. I mean, no offense to, Charmander and Bulbasaur and Squirtle and Pidgeotto. What the fuck would happen if somebody bumped into him and he spilled his popcorn and he needed a battle?
Nothing. He would have to use his other Pokemon.
That's bullshit.
Well, we've established. Remember, Doug. So remember, it's a kids show, and then we also have Ash as a 10-year-old. So we have to put ourselves in the mind of a 10-year-old who has other Pokemon. His other Pokemon are strong, and Pikachu's kind of a freelancer. Kind of gets used.
Well, but he's not though.
He's not, but he acts like it. Because remember the episode where Brock got his Vulpix, and he was all over Misty in that entire episode again. So him and Misty just they're kind of joined at the hip, just like Ash is.
I get it, and I understand it's a kids show, and I understand they basically travel in a group anyway, so it's not like. But what if something were to happen?
Yeah.
What if
Ash would be fucked unless he used any of his other Pokemon?
Well, and we're going to get into Ash using his Pokemon in a second, but it's just, like, at no point, and I can make this inference because we don't cut to Ash to find out, but at no point am I to assume that Ash looked down and went, where's Pikachu? Or for that matter, where's Misty? Like, they're just going around town just in their fucking zoot suits.
Yeah.
Brock's hitting on women. And
I was about to say, Ash and Brock went out to go party. They finally got tired. They put their regular clothes back on and said, hey, there's a magic show over here. So let's go on in and catch this magic show. Oh, nobody's in here. Oh, Pikachu and Misty are on stage. All right. And at this point, Misty is embarrassed because she full on gets the red thing above her nose, and she's like, "What are you two doing here?"
What does Ash say? Because I've scrolled past it.
Yeah, well, Ash was like, "That's a really cute suit," and
he goes, "Are you part of the show?" And Pikachu's. I mean, at least Pikachu's happy to see him.
Yeah,
because Pikachu's like, "Look, I got a bow tie,"
And then we get the little jack off in the back of the audience. He's like, when are we gonna get to the show? Are you gonna do any magic, or did I just waste my money? And
I can't imagine this guy was charging that much for it.
I know, but he says basically, calm down. We're gonna get into the magic for this show, and I'm going to start off with a juggling act. And then we get the Exeggutor pop up onto the stage. Or, yeah, not Exeggutor. The Execute pops onto the stage, and this is where we get good old Dexter.
So we find out that, shock, horror, surprise, Execute are egg Pokemon. And he said, even though they resemble an egg, they're more closely related to a plant.
Yes, they said to the seed of a plant. So basically, if you were to put them into the ground, they would evolve into Exeggutor, which we end up finding out later in the episode are basically trees.
Yeah, palm trees.
Yes.
With 3 cocoa nuts.
So, but yeah, we get Melvin trying to do a juggling act with the Execute. And it's basically him just holding his hands, and the Execute are basically jumping around in a circle trying to give the illusion of juggling, Doug.
Yeah, I mean, which, not bad. I mean, obviously this act wouldn't fly in Vegas.
Hell no.
But he's at a rinky-dink carnival. I mean, what do they expect? I mean, yeah, it's bullshit because, like you said, he's just holding his hands out and they're doing their moves. And obviously the crowd doesn't take to it. They say, do some magic. And, he's like, I'm going to do some tricks that'll surprise, amaze and apprise you.
Yes, and Misty's like, don't you mean surprise and amaze you? And
he's like, that's why I need you. We make such a good team. And the Exeggutor are so happy. And then
Brock full-blown says that Melvin's act is boring.
Well, and I mean,
full-blown. He said, this is boring.
And I mean, that's kind of fair. I mean, Oh, I thought I closed you out. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. But we get the people in the audience. They're starting to complain about Melvin's act, and they were like, "Yeah, we want to see some magic. Do a trick, or I want my money back."
And again, we don't find out what he's charging, but it can't be. It can't be any money, right? Just maybe a couple of fare tickets.
Yeah, that's what I would think.
I mean, but yeah, obviously, Melvin's kind of getting flustered. So he's like, fine. And he's got this trick, and we see, Pikachu's kind of giving some electricity for ambiance. And he's got a scepter. And he's like, this is going to be fire. And he points his stick out towards the audience, and we get a little. If anybody saw AEW Revolution.
Oh, and people that don't know what that is, the last wrestling pay-per-view from All Elite Wrestling, they had a match called the Exploding Barbed Wire Match, where the conclusion of that match was supposed to be a big giant kaboom. And it was a dud.
And the resulting little puff from Melvin's wand is about the extent that we got at the end of that match. and the crowd and the audience at the show basically reacts the same way that they reacted at the show. Except I don't know if they all fainted in unison, but he goes, it's going to be fire, and it goes, and they all go, ah.
And they call him man one and man two, and he's like, that was pathetic. You're the worst. And Melvin starts getting pissed. He's like, just one more try. And he I think it had to do with his emotion. And he takes his wand and he's like, man, and a bunch of fucking fire. I swear, like off screen for like 1.2 seconds, he poured gasoline into this thing, because this thing just started spewing out fire like it was nobody's business.
And I mean, they're ducking between the seats, and they're avoiding it, and unfortunately his fire triggers the sprinkler system in the venue.
Yes.
And everybody gets wet, and
we find out there's more than 5 people in the audience.
Yeah, but they were hidden apparently. And so, everybody's soaking wet, and there's a cowboy, and they're throwing pizza and soft drinks at him.
And then I want to point out that the 2 guys in the back of the cowboy look like people, like cartoon versions of the characters straight out of the movie Grease.
Yeah. I could be with you on that one.
So
somebody fucking, as they're walking out, somebody chucks a bottle at him and just brains him.
Yeah. And just whack. He's like, Yeah, because Melvin's sitting there. He's like, well, wait a minute, everybody. The best part is about to happen. And then here comes the bottle, and the bottle just hits him. And I'm at a freeze frame right now of after Melvin falls onto the ground, Pikachu and Misty are just sitting there like, ooh.
Yeah. Well, what are they supposed to do? You know, they're wet too, you know.
So we go straight from that, and we cut scene, and this is a matter of timing, I'm guessing, because we literally go straight from that to Melvin's boss meeting him outside of the tent. We'll call it backstage, and he's with his execute, and his boss is like, "You're fired. You can't bring in any type of attraction to your show. You suck. You can't do anything right." And fucking Melvin just looks defeated.
Well, yeah, I mean, he hasn't had the best day. You know, his assistant quit. You know, he fucking almost drowned the studio out.
He almost caught it on fire, the fucking boss says.
Right, he caught it on. Right. Well, I guess I missed that chunk. Obviously, that's the more important thing because that would mean that's what had to trigger the sprinklers. But obviously he travels with the carnival.
Yes.
Right, because you know at the beginning of the episode it says, "Oh, the carnival's in this town." But I'm still trying to figure out how. Because who pays for the carnival?
I'm guessing it's his boss.
Because, shouldn't the town pay to bring the carnival in?
Yeah, I mean, you would think so. But...
Because, a carnival's not just going to roam around and just pull up and set up stakes just without warning.
Well, no. But I'm guessing... And this is kind of the vibe that I get from carnivals, at least the ones that come out here to Illinois. I'm guessing they pay a fee to host it. Normally it's in a parking lot of a school or a city mall, and they'll put up everything, and the whatever city they're in gets a cut of whatever their profits are. But obviously the circus has to live and the cast needs to be paid and everyone that's there needs to eat. So I'm sure they get a cut of it, but I don't think the town themselves pays for the circus. I think it's more of the attraction of bringing in people and bringing them together. Kind of similar. I guess you can, if you want me to explain it a little better, for you, it would be like bringing WrestleMania to town. You get a bunch of people together in one big venue.
Well, yeah, but I know who pays for WrestleMania.
Yes.
You know, I mean, I understand that for this guy to be a viable part of the carnival, he has to be pulling his weight, and that's kind of where I'm guessing that he's falling short.
Yes.
Because for his boss basically said, "You almost burnt this entire damn carnival to the ground." You know, so he's obviously a liability at this point. You know, and who knows how many other towns that's almost happened in.
But we basically go straight from that to Misty kind of feeling bad for him, telling him to kind of cheer up, and that Melvin's saying he'll never make it to Las Vegas, and he says that he's going to give up on his dreams, and here comes good old Ash Ketchum to the rescue. Like, it seems like in every episode that he's in, that's what he's trying to do, even though he doesn't know what he's talking about. But Ash tries to put on a magic act of his own, Doug.
Well, you missed Misty with a zinger. because as they're watching this poor guy get fired, Ash goes, "I feel sorry for the guy. He just doesn't know what he's doing." And Misty goes, "Yeah, you know how that feels."
Misty's always throwing Ash under the bus.
And I mean, I understand that. I mean, he owes her a bike, and I mean, let's not forget about that. But yeah, so Melvin's feeling sorry for himself, and Ash comes in and goes, "You're not going to give up on your dream that easy, are you?" And I mean, he's letting him have it. And Melvin says, "But the show's no good." And then Ash basically says, "Learn fucking better tricks."
Yep. And then we get a shot of Meowth from Team Rocket looking down at the trio, and James and Jesse are on the top of the balloon and they're tanning. And then we come straight back down to Melvin practicing some new tricks to try to get a new act together.
Right. So he's spinning his wand, and the wand produces a bouquet of roses that immediately fall apart
Because they're dead.
Right. that I think was where you were talking with the dead flower earlier. I think you mixed up your flower tricks.
I did.
And Melvin just is like, this is hopeless, and his Exeggutor trying to perk him up, and then Ash, like you say, gets the bright idea of being Mr. Fix-It. And Ash says that's going to be a Pokemon magic show, and then we got Ash doing his best Aladdin impression.
So he goes and gets a box, and the box has 3 holes in it. And he says that out of each hole, he'll either have a grass come out of it, water, or fire. So obviously we know inside of the box is going to be Squirtle, Charmander, or Bulbasaur. And what makes this funny is he goes, what? Or no, he goes, fire. Charmander does his fire attack.
Right in Melvin's face.
And then he says, water. And fucking Squirtle goes and does his water attack. And as soon as Squirtle does his water attack and he's getting ready to sit down, he sits on Charmander's flame of a tail and kind of burns himself. And Charmander turns around and his tail gets in Bulbasaur's face, almost burning Bulbasaur to a damn crisp. And then they just start fighting inside of this box.
And I have an issue here. Squirtle blames Charmander for Squirtle sitting on his tail.
Yes.
How the hell? Where's his tail supposed to go?
Yeah, for real. I mean, it's not like you can put out Charmander's tail, because if you put out Charmander's tail, as we found out in previous episode, he'll die.
He'll die. So yeah. The 3 of them fight, and Charmander comes out of the box, guns blazing, and does flamethrower again, and gets everybody.
Yes. And Ash is sitting there trying to get everybody to stop fighting, and just fucking, he gets it too. And
he has a really good line. He's like, "I guess I'm going to need a bigger box," which it's a Jaws reference. It's fine,
So
it's clever.
So it's at this point, Melvin's still down on his luck, and Ash is looking at the Exeggute, and Exeggute starts getting yellow eyes. It looks like they're using hypnosis on Ash, and Ash should I blame this on Dexter. Dexter seems like he wants to be brilliant Siri when it needs to, but doesn't give the best information before things happen. And they use fucking hypnosis on Ash, and Ash is just dazed and under a spell for the next 10 minutes.
Yeah, and you would think Dexter would have led with that information, as opposed to, actually, it's not eggs, it's a seed of a plant. It's like, I don't care. What's its attack?
But
tell me it's going to hypnotize a motherfucker, for goodness sake.
And what gets me is Melvin fucking knows what just happened. He looks at Ash and tells Ash, Ash turn around in a circle 3 times and act like a Bulbasaur.
And he does it.
Yeah, he's like Bulbasaur, Bulbasaur, Bulbasaur. And Ash goes around in a circle, and Misty and Brock are like, what the hell is going on?
So then I assume that this is probably the act break. And then we see that Ash is pulling a cart with Melvin and the Exeggutor into the forest. And we see the hot air balloon with Team Rocket. And they're basically filling in the blanks for us, the viewers, because we're idiots.
Yes. And we get to the point when Brock, Misty, and Pikachu are following the tracks of Melvin and Ash, which kind of leads me to think, what the hell happened during the commercial break where Melvin took off on a wagon with Ash, and Ash isn't running, Ash is fucking walking. So why were they so far behind?
Right.
But
and why wasn't Pikachu implied to follow Ash? For goodness sakes, this is going to be my big thing from now on. This is going to be my hill to die on.
Yeah, it is. But we get a flashback to what happened with the Exeggutor, and Misty's kind of putting 2 and 2 together. And she's like, Ash seems like he's under hypnosis, and Melvin seems like he's controlling Ash. So we need to go and find Ash to freaking save him.
Right. So luckily the wagon produced big enough tire tracks that all they basically had to do was walk into the forest and go, oh, we can just follow these.
Yes. But it comes down to where Melvin brings him up to what looks like the middle of a forest and tells Ash to pull out his Pokédex at the trees, and it's a bunch of Exeggutor sleeping, all standing up. So at this point, Melvin knows exactly what he's going to do and tells Ash to send out his Pokemon to battle these Exeggutor, and that Melvin at this point is going to capture every single Exeggutor that Ash injures with his Pokemon. And we've talked about it on previous episodes when it comes to Charmander. I can see why Charmander is a dick later on, because Ash doesn't treat Charmander the greatest, and Charmander doesn't really have a great upbringing.
Well, no, he was... Ash was coming in from a disadvantage because obviously Charmander had been given the short end of the stick by Damien. So even though Ash saved his life, he's still, in the back of his mind, has to have a little bit of mistrust.
Yes.
And then, how many times has Charmander been used as a goddamn flashlight?
He says he ain't doing that shit no more.
And how many times has Charmander had to run for his life with his tail in front of him because he was in relative vicinity of water, for goodness sakes. And, he was just put into a box and said, you're going to be a magic trick, behave yourself. And
freaking almost burned the box down.
Everybody has a goddamn breaking point, maybe, as a kid, I remember going, why doesn't, what switch flipped that Charmander's an asshole? I mean, I didn't say asshole as a kid. I wasn't that cool. From a playing the game standpoint, I understand. And I don't want to tip too far into, pardon me, next week's episode, but because they kind of touch on this then as well. But from a game standpoint, if you were trading with a friend and your friend's Pokemon was a high level and you didn't have, a certain number of badges, that Pokemon wasn't going to listen to you.
Hell no.
So I understand that's where they're kind of going from. Charmander evolves, and Ash, even though he has what, 4 badges at this point, 4 or
Yes.
5.
He has 4 badges.
He has 4 badges at this point. Even then, he's still kind of just dicking around. So he's not really out there, pounding the pavement training. So yeah, he might have used Charmander in enough like real life situations that he's gaining experience and evolving, but that doesn't mean that he's ready for him.
Exactly. So it's at this point Melvin has captured what appears from the video at least 30 to 40 Exeggutor.
Yeah, because they're just all standing there in a bunch. And can I touch on Dexter for 1 second? Like, I'm not going to go through the whole entry.
Oh, absolutely, Doug.
But at the end of the entry for Exeggutor, what does it say? Exeggutor's special move is hypnosis.
It didn't say that for execute.
It sure didn't. It's like, you don't need to tell us that now. We understand that now.
So it's at this point, Melvin's like, now that I've captured these Exeggutor, I can use hypnosis and command everybody to come see my magic show. At last, I'm finally on my way to Las Vegas. And at this point, Team Rocket is getting ready to appear. And Melvin just has the best line in the world. He's like, these guys look like they're more magicians than I am. And okay, and I'm going to sound like the fucking pervert of this episode. What the fuck is going on with Jesse's boobs in this episode?
I mean, you're going to have to explain that.
When they first, when the smoke is all around Jesse and they have the first close-up shot of Jesse and James, she looks like she has like the biggest boobs, kind of similar to what would be in an Austin Powers movie.
Well, it's the dress. It pushes them up.
But she has never been that exaggerated in any of these episodes.
Well, look, I don't think we're allowed to comment because we've obviously covered Beauty at the Beach and fucking James had boobs. I mean, that's it. I mean,
but at this point, Jessie looks like she's filling out more than James did. Maybe she went and got a job done, and we have no idea.
I mean, I don't know. Like I say, I'm chalking it up to the dress pushing him up because when she goes back to her regular Team Rocket suit,
she's all covered up.
Right.
So, but yeah, Melvin says they look like more magicians than I do, and Team Rocket goes through their spiel. Meowth comes in and brings one of the magic boxes, and basically, Meowth makes Jesse and James disappear.
Right.
And Melvin is all smitten, and Team Rocket is now back in their regular uniforms, and they're back in their hot balloon, and they jump out, and they jump back onto the stage, and they're trying to talk Melvin into basically believing that he's a failure as a magician and that they're better.
Right, because they said if you were a real magician, you could do tricks like that. And, poor Melvin starts doubting himself again. And Team Rocket's basically like, hey, don't worry. You're going to be real good at catching those Exeggutor for us. And Melvin, I don't want to. And they're basically like, you don't have a choice. And they fucking tie him up. And at this point, his Exeggutor jump out of the wagon, and they start staring down Team Rocket. And James has a really good line. He goes, "What does he say?" He goes, hey, you Exeggutor, be quiet, or I'm gonna go beat the cholesterol out of you.
I almost
fucking
fell out of
laughed.
my chair.
I,
And
and
Execute didn't really take kind to that, and they all bunched together, and the little seed Pokemon evolve and sprout up into Exeggutor themselves.
and the Exeggutor start hitting with hypnosis, so they try to look away, and the other Exeggutor are hitting with hypnosis, so they're just completely
Surrounded.
so right. And apparently, the only person that's not affected, and I mean, they're so bunched together that we've got hypnosis reflecting off of the Exeggutor to the point where everybody's hypnotized except for Melvin, including Team Rocket.
Yes.
And they all just take off.
And I'm guessing the reason that Melvin is not affected by this hypnosis is due to the fact that he's the one that caught all these Exeggutor. So
Yeah, that's a fair point.
so that no matter what, these are his Pokemon.
Right. Even though he basically didn't do anything to get him except for his original Execute.
Yes. And
Because yeah, he caught him, but he was basically just throwing Pokeballs willy nilly.
so at this point, the Exeggutor, as you said, starts storming back into town. But along with storming back into town, Jesse, James, and Meowth are under a spell too, and they're keeping up with these Exeggutors. So hats off to them for being in shape.
Getting their cardio in, that's for sure.
For real. And let's not move past, but Ash is still under the spell as well. So to wake him up, Pikachu fucking thunder shocks him, and Ash is like, how the hell did I get here? I don't remember shit.
You'd think he'd built up an immunity, because this is probably like the 10th time he's been shocked.
Oh, I'm sure it's been way more than that, but yeah.
So, we find out that the Exeggutor are marching back into town, and it's up to Melvin to stop them.
And he ends up running into his boss. The Exeggutor have basically torn up all of the circus. So the circus has been stampede all over. And his boss is like, well, you know what? These Exeggutor are all sorts of trouble, and they've ruined my circus. So I planted a bunch of bombs underneath the ground. And as soon as they stomp over these bombs, they're going to go kaplooey.
So I'm sitting there going, this is some bullshit. Like, I don't. This motherfucker planted landmines.
Yes.
And
He's willing on killing these Pokemon.
He doesn't give a shit. He's losing money, And he's like, I can't allow. And this is where I'm more confused, because he says, well, I can't allow them to cause more damage to the town. Which to me says, this circus doesn't move.
Yes. And what we end up finding out, Doug, Misty comes to the conclusion that that Melvin's Exeggutor, when it was using hypnosis, was actually putting hypnosis on the 30 or 40 Exeggutor that were over there, and his one Exeggutor is what's leading all of these other Exeggutor out here. And Misty's like, they're all under hypnosis. They just have to snap out of it. And it's at this point Ash gets the bright idea to wake them up.
Right.
So they all send out their Pokemon to basically burn, put some water in their eyes, use Vine Whip. Pikachu's over here shocking motherfuckers. And just waking up all of these Exeggutor, and Melvin's all down on his luck, thinking that he's done so bad and he can't control his own Pokemon.
Well, and come to find out that Squirtle and Bulbasaur aren't really doing anything. There's a good line because Ash says Bulbasaur to use Razor Leaf, and he basically just ends up giving the Exeggutor a haircut. Which,
Squirtle is using its water gun, and they're just soaking up all of the water.
So they get called back, and unfortunately, it's left to Charmander. So he's just doing flamethrower everywhere, and he's getting a decent handful of them.
And then he runs out of breath.
Right, and he's just you look over, he's just exhausted, and it's at this point where they're like, "Hey, Melvin, don't you have a fire trick?" And he goes, "My trick never works." It's like, you dumb fuck, it just worked 10 minutes ago or whatever, or a half hour. Time is meaningless. I mean,
and Misty full blown says, if you don't do your fire trick, all of these Exeggutor are gonna blow up because your freaking horse of a boss freaking planted landmines.
Yeah, and everybody's just cool with that. I mean, that just blows my mind. Yeah, and we see just how exhausted Charmander is, and they said, "Look, Melvin, you got to at least try." And I'm going to give it my best shot. He's getting, and so Melvin gets up there, and this was supposed to be to give Charmander a breather.
Yes.
And as soon as Melvin gets ready, Ash is basically like, "Hey, Charmander, go help him." What the No!
No. And
he's out.
Fucking Charmander. No wonder Charmander gives Ash such a hard time later on, because Charmander's like, you overwork me. Like, you don't give me a break.
Torch.
What's up?
I am not a torch.
Yes. So it's at this point Melvin finally gets the courage to use his own flamethrower, and all the Exeggutor end up basically waking up, and they don't get blown to smithereens. And it's at this point Melvin saves the town along with Charmander again. And all of these Exeggutor are burnt to a crisp. Team Rocket's like, what the hell is going on? And Team Rocket goes blasting off again in the crowd of Exeggutor. So all the Exeggutor leave Melvin. So let's not even touch on that, because they're his Pokemon. But he is only left with his regular Exeggutor. And at this point, Charmander is kind of smitten. And at this point, I mean, all the Exeggutor end up running into the landmine anyway.
Yeah, so they're gone. Except for the original one.
Yes.
And we don't find out what happened to them. I mean, I think we can. I mean, I guess we see. Well, I mean, we do find out in a minute that they're still running and Team Rocket's still trapped.
Yes.
But we don't find out their end game. So I don't know.
Well, I mean, we saw an explosion. The explosion doesn't get explained at all, because just like you said, the Exeggutor are still running. So did they run through the landmine and it didn't do shit to them, and they just kept going, or did it kill like 5 of them and the rest of them just kept running?
Oh, it's just 5 of them. We still got 76 of us.
So it's at this point, Charmander is so out of breath, but he looks determined and he starts glowing. And everyone's like, Charmander looks funny. And then Brock goes, he's evolving. And fucking Charmander evolves into Charmeleon. And Ash goes up and hugs Charmeleon and calls him Charmander. And he's like, oh, I guess I can't call you Charmander anymore. You're Charmeleon. And Charmeleon's like, Char, and fucking burns Ash to a damn crisp. And this is just the starting point of Charmander. I mean, not Charmander, but Charmeleon turning into a dick.
Yeah, and, like you said, he basically burns Ash's ear off. And everybody's, oh, that's Charmeleon's such a rapscallion. Oh, just you wait. And, we see, Melvin and his original, his Exeggutor, I'm going to say.
Yes.
And, they're waving and,
we get the usual
Vegas
goodbye.
And all that. And then we cut to the pack of Exeggutors still running. And we find out the Team Rocket is still in the middle of all that humanity.
Yes. And this is where we end up ending this week's episode. Brock says that he'll see Melvin in Las Vegas. And as you said, Team Rocket's still in the middle of these Exeggutor and they can't get out. And that's how we end this week's episode. And the narrator kind of cracks a joke saying Team Rocket is marching off again. And that's it.
That's it. And the Exeggutor is not explained.
We get no conclusion to the Exeggutor at all.
Spoiler alert, we're going to see Team Rocket next week like nothing happened.
Yes.
Yeah, also, what the fuck?
So, a lot of questions not answered at the end of this episode, but it's Pokemon. It's for kids.
It's a filler episode.
It's a filler episode. It's the last episode of the year for the brand. So they wanted to go out on a high note. They gave you Charmeleon on the last episode. So that's it. So do you have anything else to add to this, Doug? I mean, we've kind of been through everything in this episode.
We've been through everything, but also nothing at the same time.
Exactly. I kind of feel like this was another Beauty and the Beach, and I want to get your rating real quick right before we sign off. So what do you think?
I mean, this is way better than Beauty at the Beach. I mean, we got an evolution. We got a couple evolutions. We saw 2 new Pokemon that we didn't know.
Well, 3.
3, I guess, Charmeleon.
Yeah.
There were some funny moments, a couple of funny lines. Like I say, it's a nothing episode because, we're going to see Team Rocket next week and nothing's going to be said about Exeggutor or Exeggcute or Melvin or anything.
No, next week's episode is starring Charmeleon and the damn Paris.
The damn Paris.
So, but there's a lot to say about that damn Paris, but yeah, that we have next week to talk about that.
Yeah.
So, all right. So what do you give as a rating for this episode? I would give it about a 2.5 star out of 5. It's not the best episode, but it's somewhat in the middle.
I mean, it's probably about a 3.
Okay.
I mean, like I say, there was some good lines.
It was a little funny.
We did see a decent chunk of, at least 3 other of Ash's Pokemon.
Coinciding.
Yeah, and like I say, we ended up seeing 3 new Pokemon that we didn't know anything about.
We saw that Ash refuses to use his Pidgeotto.
Right.
Pidgeotto did not make an appearance at all in this episode. And Pidgeotto would have been very effective towards these Exeggutor. I just want to throw that out there.
Because he could have flown above and maybe he could have held Charmander, and maybe Charmander wouldn't have had to use as much flamethrower because he would have been coming at him from an above angle.
I mean, for fuck's sake, Pidgeotto picked up Charmander. I believe it was in one of the banned episodes. Wasn't it Beauty and the Beach?
It was Beauty and the Beach.
Yeah.
Can't remember what they were doing.
They were throwing flyers at him.
Well, no, Charmander was lighting the grill in that episode. No, you're right though. He's got one of them. No,
I think it was Squirtle.
I think they were all teaming up. It was some kind of attack.
Yeah.
But it wasn't that episode. But I know what you're talking about.
So it's happened before. So all right, well, will you give this episode a 3? I'll give it about a 2.5. Like I said, to me, it wasn't the best episode, but it was there. It was the final episode of the year, which if I was a kid looking back on this now, I probably wouldn't have liked that this was the last episode for 4 months. But
well, would you wouldn't know.
No. But I was also at this point watching Pokemon on a regular. And I remember being highly upset when Pokemon would take a break, but then they would come back and have like 3 episodes in one day.
Right.
So, but all right. Well, it's at this point, Doug, we can go ahead and say our good old goodbyes. So go ahead and say goodbye, Doug.
Bye, Doug.
And this is Wrestling Chris G telling all of you, make sure you join us next week, because next week's episode is about a damn Paris called The Problem with Paris. And man, do I have a problem with Paris. And you're going to want to listen to this episode next week. So have a good night, everybody, and see you next week.